Remax family. This is Cleve Gaddis, who's with Remax Center right here in Northeast Atlanta, Georgia, Johns Creek, Georgia, to be specific. By the way, if you have any referrals, send them my way. Again, Cleve Gaddis, and I am so excited to be with you today. I'm also a real estate talk radio show host. I'm also a coach with Workman Success Systems, and I find there are agents all over the country who are having problems today with inventory. And buyers agents who are out there working with buyers on a daily basis are getting more and more frustrated because in some cases they're making 10 offers, 12 offers, 20 offers before they can get somebody under contract. And it's not that I can give you 12 or 14 easy tips that will make all the difference in the world in you being able to find a home for that particular buyer. But I think I can today give you some different ways of looking at things. I think in some cases, it's the way the buyer's agents look at the market as if they have no control over it. And they don't have control over the market, but they do have control of the buyer's expectations. They do have control of lots of things that we're going to talk about today. And so this is all about how do you find inventory in a low inventory market? If you're not doing everything you need to do as a buyer's agent to help your buyers find homes, even in this competitive market, then I hate to say it, but I almost think kind of shame on you. And I know it sounds like I'm judging you. I'm not judging you. I understand exactly what it feels like to be in a market where emotions run high, inventory is too low. There are 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 buyers for every single home that is for sale. I get it totally, but I don't see how it helps us to acknowledge that that's the way the market is. Meaning, I don't think it's helpful for us or our clients for us to say, well, that's just the way it is. So nothing we can do about it. We'll just have to wait until more inventory comes to market. Well, the reality is some of your buyers need to buy a home now. They need to figure out a way to find inventory and buy that home, get it under contract, get it closed, and move their family in there because their life can't be on hold while we wait for inventory to get better in the market. The reality is that they need to move forward now. So this is all about finding inventory in a low inventory market. When I was in my early 20s, I had a little landscaping business. And as part of that landscaping business, we had this crew that did maintenance, lawn maintenance. They would cut your grass and trim your bushes and things like that. And I sold that business when I got out of the landscaping business. I went to work for Electrolux, the vacuum cleaner company, and I sold that business to another gentleman. And that gentleman was supposed to make monthly payments over a 4 or 5 year period. Well, after about the first year, he stopped making monthly payments. And I hired an attorney to help me collect the payments from him, but I made a mistake and I continued to meet with this particular buyer on a monthly basis to talk about how he would restructure things. And what happened is over time, I continued to let him chip away and chip away and chip away and chip away at me. And I'm not using this example to say, hey, don't let somebody you're in a disagreement with get too close to you. What I'm telling you is that sometimes we need to protect ourselves from ourselves. So my attorney said, hey, don't let your enemy have a seat at the table. And I'm going to tell you right now, don't let the way you're thinking have a seat at your table. Don't let it influence the outcome of this buyer trying to buy a home. Make sure that you're offering them additional options. Maybe the options work, maybe the options don't work. But I'll tell you, offering them some options is way better than doing nothing at all. So let's jump right into the content. First of all, buyers agents must lead the search. Now, you're probably thinking, well, duh, Cleve. Of course, buyer's agents need to lead the search. But the reality is very few buyer's agents actually lead the search for homes. So let me give you a couple things to keep in mind. If you are a buyer agent or buyer specialist or whatever your title is, and you're responsible for finding homes for buyers in your market, then you need to continue to use that automated e-alert or whatever system it is that you might use through Booj, for example, to automatically notify a buyer prospect when a listing comes available that matches their criteria. The problem is most buyer's agents wait for the buyer to find a property that works for them, wait for the buyer to tell them that they have found a property that they want to see, and then they schedule times to go see the house. Well, the problem is, number one, a buyer is not qualified to recognize a good home from a bad home looking at it online and photos. And the reality is, a lot of times buyers might reject a home that would be a really good fit because you've been in that neighborhood, or you've been in that model, or you've been in whatever, and you would know that this home has much more potential for this buyer than they might see for themselves. So what happens, and what you need to do, is if you set people up on an automated e-alert or listing search, you need to make sure that you're copied on all of those as well. And then I want to give you a couple of things to remember. If you want to write down these words, these will be very good. Write down the words specific and specific. And remember these words. When you are getting copied on the listing alerts, the e-alerts, the listing searches, whatever you call it, I want you to go through and look at all of the listings. And every time you get an e-alert or a listing search for one of your prospects, I want you to find one listing that you like best. And I want you to find one thing about that listing that you like most. And so that is one specific listing and one specific feature of the listing. So it works like this, and it says, "Hey Tom, Cleve Gaddis calling from Remax. Just wanted to let you know that I found a perfect home for you at 1234 First Street. You might have seen it in the information I emailed you earlier today. It is the one with the red front door and the amazing gym set, playground set in the backyard that might just be perfect for your kids. I think we ought to go see that property tomorrow." Now, what this does is it helps you better connect with your buyer prospects because you're speaking their language. You're talking about something that resonates with them, and you're being very, very specific. In most cases, we tend to be very general, and we don't understand why we have a hard time moving a buyer forward. But the reality is when we can find a specific home and then mention a specific feature that we know would be a benefit to them, like, for example, the window above the sink that looks out into the luscious green backyard, it could be that resonates with our buyer prospect, and we get them to get out and start looking at more homes. But the main thing to remember here is this: you cannot, under any circumstances, in my opinion, leave a buyer to his or her own efforts to find the homes that they want to see. They're not qualified to recognize a good home from a bad home. You are, however, and as we move forward in this presentation, you're going to realize that your responsibility is to help the buyers think differently about the process of buying a home. So number one, as a buyer's agent, and if you're a team leader out there, you need to make sure all of your buyer's agents are doing this. You need to lead the search. You need to feel responsible for finding homes. I'll be honest with you. When I start working with buyers sometimes, and I don't work with buyers a whole lot anymore, but when I start working with them and I find 2 or 3 homes to show them today, I get worried that I might not be able to find any homes to show them next week. You got to get over that. And if I've got to find more homes to show them, it's going to cause me to be much more creative in the homes that I try to show them. Let's move on to the next slide. Now, here's the next tip for you, and that is to gather criteria specifically. Ask a buyer to paint a very clear picture about where the home should be located and what it should look like in bedrooms and bathrooms and basements and crawl spaces and slabs and what type of countertops. Get as much information as you possibly can. And this is going to sound funny, but then I'm going to tell you to ignore most of that information. I don't know if you've ever heard the statement, buyers are liars. When I first got into real estate, I heard that quite frequently. And I actually thought it meant that buyers were dishonest. Maybe I was a little simple-minded back then. It was almost 20 years ago. But that's not what it meant at all. What it meant was buyers don't know enough to know what they want and what they don't want. So every time you take a buyer out into the field to look at houses, they're learning new things about those homes. They're learning new things about their preferences. They're learning new things about what they like and what they don't like. So if you put every single bit of the search criteria that a buyer gives you into the listing service to find listings, you're going to find a very, very, very short list of listings that match all of the different criteria. But when, for example, if somebody wanted to look specifically in the Johns Creek High School District, and they wanted to look between 400,000 and 600,000, and they wanted 4 or more bedrooms and 3 or more bathrooms, see, you can search generally for anything that meets that criteria in the school district. Because we need to be creative when it comes to finding inventory for people to look at. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I want you to think through the last buyer you were working with, and how often during the process of working with that buyer did you feel stuck? Did you feel like there was no inventory to show, like you were not in control, like they were not in control, like you were on some kind of wild ride and didn't even know where you were going to land? Well, the reality is you're still in control and they're still in control if you start looking at the process just a little bit differently. So the second thing is to search more generally, collect information very specifically, collect criteria and the requirements they have in the home specifically, but then go back and search more generally. We'll talk more about that as we go over the next couple of slides. The third tip is to consider different geographic areas. Now, I know what you're thinking, Cleve, I can't go show properties to people that are outside of the area they're interested in. And I say, you probably can. And I know this is really hard. In fact, if you've been in the business long enough, you've worked with a buyer who complained that you took them and showed them properties that did not meet their criteria. And so I understand how we might be a little skittish, or we might be concerned that we don't want to take people and show them properties in a bunch of different geographic areas. But in some case, and we'll go back and use the Johns Creek High School District, happens to be one right here in Johns Creek, Georgia, where I live. And if somebody wants to live in Johns Creek High School District, they might very well consider Chattahoochee. They might consider Alpharetta. They might consider Northview. They might even consider North Gwinnett High School. And I know people think they get so fixated or fixed on where they want to be that it's not possible to get them to consider different properties. But in our area, for example, if you purchased a house in the Johns Creek High School District, that house might cost $200,000 less. You heard me right, $200,000 less in one of the neighboring school districts. It's not because those neighboring school districts are not any good. It's just because the average sales price of homes in those areas is a little bit lower. And when the Johns Creek High School District was put together, it sort of put together a lot of high-end neighborhoods all in one high school cluster, totally by accident. So people can afford to live in the schools that are around the Johns Creek High School District, which, by the way, are equally as highly rated as the Johns Creek High School District. And so my suggestion for you, item number 3, is to consider different geographic areas. Make sure that you tell somebody, hey, I know you want to live over here, but let's go over to this school district today and let's take a look at 3 homes so we can see what your budget gets you in this school district. So tip number 3, consider different geographic areas. A lot of what we've been talking about can be summed up by this next tip, tip number 4, which is buyers must know, K-N-O-W, what they're saying no, N-O to. Let me try that on for you again here. Buyers must know, K-N-O-W, what they are saying no, N-O to. Let's just pretend everybody out there who's listening has been in some type of romantic relationship with multiple people in their lifetimes. And let's just say that some of you might have gotten involved in a romantic relationship with somebody that didn't work out in the end. Well, the reality is that by knowing K-N-O-W, what you didn't like, by knowing what you didn't like, it allowed you to be confident in what you were saying no to and moving forward. So it's you need to help your customers know, K-N-O-W, what they're saying no to. And it would make sense to have a conversation with a buyer. Now, in the book, I think it's called Ninja Selling, a fantastic book, by the way, if you've never read it, it talks about the 85% rule. And it's an agent who sets the buyers up with the right expectation to say, hey, when we're out looking at homes today, we're probably not going to find a home that meets 100% of your criteria and your criteria together. But we might very well find one that meets 85% of your criteria and 85% of yours if you've got 2 buyers working together looking to find a house. And so if it meets 85% of the criteria, my suggestion is that you move forward and make an offer on that home, because you probably won't find something that will work out better for you. So make sure that you're helping a buyer understand, if I show you properties that are slightly outside of your price range, or that have an extra bedroom or 1 too few bedrooms, or that might be on a slab when you thought you wanted a basement, or that might have a crawl space, or that might have 2 chimneys instead of 1, 2 fireplaces instead of 1, whatever it is, that you're trying to help them KNOW what they're saying no to. Because if you as a buyer are right, by the way, in any decision we have to make in life, if we know KNOW all the things we're saying no to, then we can be much more confident, much more positive, much more willing to move forward on the things that we say yes to. So tip number four, buyers must know KNOW what they're saying no to. Seems so simple, but it's very, very powerful. Tip number 5, you got to search for sale by owners on Zillow and other sites. Don't throw stuff at me. Don't yell at me. Don't cuss me. I know we don't necessarily want to go and find FSBOs to sell houses for. But if I'm working with a client, let's say the client's name is Renee, and Renee wants to buy a home, I'm either interested in Renee's best interest or I'm not. I'm either willing to do what I need to in order to put her interests first in order to help her find a home, or I'm going to put my interests first. And I will tell you, it's my belief that if we put other people's interests first and we are totally selfless in the way we represent them as we move them through a transaction, that what goes around comes around. Meaning we might not be paid everything we need to be paid, and we might find a FSBO who doesn't want to pay us what we think our time is worth, but we will have helped a buyer find a home, and we might be the only thing that helps them get into their home and get their life moving forward, let their family take the next step. So don't be afraid to search FSBOs on Zillow, other sites. We've put a few examples here. I don't really care where you're searching for FSBOs, but if you're looking in a specific geographic area and you're not able to find homes, then start looking for what might be for sale by owner. I will tell you, as you work hard trying to sell homes that are listed for sale by owner, when you go preview the home, you're almost always going to have an opportunity to meet the seller, and it might be a great opportunity for you to talk to somebody about potentially listing their home as well. Because as we know, based on our statistics, the homes that are offered for sale by owner don't sell for as much as homes sold by realtors, and they might be willing to list their home with you. And I don't know if you've noticed, but in almost every single market area in the country, we don't have enough inventory. So if you could figure out a way to bring an extra 4 or 5 or 10 or 15 listings to the market in your market this year, you might have a real impact on the market. Tip number 6, you got to keep them an A. Now, at Workman Success Systems and in our business, we categorize leads 3 different ways. We categorize leads as either an A, which means that person is ready to buy or sell, and you always have an appointment with them, so there's no need to follow up, because when you leave today's appointment, you set the appointment to meet with them the next time. That's an A. A is somebody who's ready to buy or sell immediately, who you always have an appointment with. A B is a prospect or a buyer who's looking to buy a home or even sell a home within the next 90 days. And you follow up with those prospects twice a month during the weeks of the 1st and the 15th. And then a C is a prospect who's looking to buy a home in 90 days or longer, and you follow up with them once a month during the week of the 8th. So an A is someone who's looking to buy or sell immediately and who you always have an appointment with. If you're a team leader, I'll promise you your buyer agents are not always setting appointments to show homes next week when they meet with a buyer this week. And it's because they feel like they found the 3 listings they showed them today by the skin of their teeth, meaning they just barely found the 3 listings to show them today. And so they don't want to stick their neck out and set the appointment to show property next week, because they think that the 3 they've shown them this week were all there were to see in the first place. But when they start searching more generally and searching different geographic criteria and being willing to take buyers to see things that may or may not be the right fit for them, then it allows your buyer's agent to keep that process moving forward. So I don't want any of us to underestimate the frustration that is experienced by buyer's agents in the market today. And you know what? If I were them, I would understand why. Gosh, I just feel paralyzed. I feel helpless. I'm not sure that I can do anything to move this forward. But that is not true. They might be the only thing that can actually connect that buyer to maybe a different home than they thought they were going to buy, but something that nonetheless allows their family to move forward. Because really, what people want is to live in a house that meets their needs and the needs of their family, that provides safety and security and all of those things. That's what they're looking for. And what they come in and tell you they might be looking for might not be what they wind up buying at all. Think back with the last buyer prospect that you worked through, whether or not they bought the exact same house that they told you they were going to buy when they started the search. And I'll bet you the answer is no. I bet you it was a different price range, and they structured their financing differently. And I bet it had a 2-car garage instead of a 3, or it had a detached garage instead of one that was in the main dwelling. So the reality is buyers don't really know what they want, and it's your job to keep them moving forward until they can figure it out. Tip number 7, great question. And if you're working with a buyer and you're having a hard time finding homes for them because there's no inventory, or they're making offers and their offers are getting rejected because somebody's coming in paying all cash and showing your buyer up, getting higher in the stack than your buyer, are you previewing properties? Are you previewing properties without the buyer? Because I'm going to invite you to consider this. If you're not out actively previewing properties, new stuff that comes on the market without your buyers, then you might not be as serious about finding a home for those buyers as you think you are. Now, I know there are some areas where they won't allow agents to come in and preview properties right now, and I get that. But the reality is you can do virtual tours and 3D videos and all kinds of things so you get a wonderful experience. You could also ask the listing broker or agent to give you a FaceTime tour of the home. I think what you'll find is this: when you get out and start taking a look at houses without your buyer prospect, I think you're going to realize that you find things that, for example, you're looking for prospect A and you go see it and it works for prospect B. And maybe prospect B is a little better qualified and can move forward with a sale faster. So I'm not telling you that this is the key to helping find inventory for buyers to move forward, but I am telling you this. It is my opinion that if you're not out there previewing properties without the buyer, then you're not nearly as serious about helping them find a home as you think you are. Try that on for size and see if maybe that resonates with you. The next thing, you got to understand the budget. You're going to say, well, duh, Cleve, of course you got to understand the budget. And I'm not sure when this happened, but when I got into the real estate business, which was around 2002 to be specific, we used to drive a lot of the discussions as real estate agents about the amount of money somebody would bring to closing as their down payment and closing cost and whatever, and then the amount of money they would pay on a monthly basis thereafter. I was talking to an agent, Charlotte, North Carolina, says, I can't find a buyer of a house. Been looking for 6 months. I said, what's the buyer's budget? They said $350,000. I just asked one question: why? Why is the budget $350,000? And he says, I don't understand the question. That's what the lender says they're qualified for, and that's what they say they want to spend. And I said, yes. But budgeting decisions are generally made based on 2 criteria and 2 criteria only. The first being the amount of money that buyer must bring to closing in order to get the deal closed. And then equally as important is the amount of money they have to pay on a monthly basis thereafter. So I was talking to this agent, and I said, well, call the lender and see if they can qualify for more. He calls the lender. The lender says this buyer could qualify for up to $650,000. They only wanted to spend $350,000. That's why the pre-qualification or the pre-approval letter was $350,000. And I said, then have a conversation with the buyer and see, is it the amount due at closing or the amount you'll pay every single month that is important to you? And in this particular case, they were trying to hit a monthly budget. Now listen to this. The place where they thought their monthly payment would be, their monthly budget would have allowed them to purchase $200,000 more. $200,000 more. They were planning to spend $800 a month more on their payments than that $350,000 budget. So I know some of you out there are so comfortable talking about mortgages and down payments and how much money to bring to closing and helping people figure out and amortize payments right on the fly. You probably got an app on your phone that you use. But there's a lot of agents out there who never have any conversations with buyers about their mortgage, about the amount of money to bring to closing and the amount of money they'll pay on a monthly basis after. And I find that when agents help buyers focus more on these 2 numbers, that they're able to get buyers to pay something that might be a little bit more, but still reasonable in order to have the house that meets their needs and basically could be a dream home for them. So focus on the amount due at closing and the amount due each month. In today's interest rate environment, I think I figured the other day it costs $4.21 for every $1,000 additionally that the buyer finances when they purchase a house. So the question is, you want to spend $10,000 more? Is it worth $42? I think most people would say that the answer is yes. So make sure you understand that budget. That is number 8. Number 9 is you got to understand the cost of waiting. Now, I know you think the buyers are properly motivated, but in a lot of cases, they think if I just keep waiting, something is going to come down the pike that is going to fit my needs perfectly. I'm going to jump all over it, and I'm going to be so glad that I waited. But the reality is, especially for those of you who've been in business a long time, is that, sometimes that better opportunity never comes. They should have bought that first house. They should have jumped on it. They should have reacted quicker. They should have submitted a cleaner offer. That second opportunity never comes. And so you have to help a buyer understand the cost of waiting. I'm not saying if you show somebody the cost of waiting that it will influence their behavior and they'll decide to make a significant change and move forward immediately. But I'm telling you this, that if you don't help them understand the cost of waiting, and then they decide to wait and it costs them more money, it could be that that's a little bit your fault. Now, I want you to let that soak in for just a second. If you don't help them understand the cost of waiting and they wait and it costs them more money, you could be just a little bit to blame. And I know I've put a little bit of onerous on you guys today. A lot of people might not be doing that, but the reality is the consumer relies on us to give them all of the facts and all the information on which they can make the best decisions. So make sure someone understands the cost of waiting. In this particular example, if someone were to have a $300,000 mortgage, we're projecting that mortgage would be $316,000 on the same house next year. And at an interest rate difference between 2.75% and 3.75%, this buyer would spend $239.47 a month or pay an additional $86,000 over the life of the loan. Let that sink in for just a second. They would pay an additional $86,209.20 over the life of the loan. Sometimes you just got to help them understand that. Number 10, and I hope you're getting some good suggestions. If you just get a couple little nuggets that will help you move buyers forward, that might give you a little bit more confidence for the business, I'm going to consider all of this time worthwhile, because I get how frustrating it is in the market today. And I believe more inventory is coming later in the year, but we got to help people with this tight inventory market now until the inventory starts to build. So here's the next tip, and that's search for listings where the sellers might be more motivated. I was on the phone with a client in Houston, Texas. They say basically sellers are not motivated in that market area because they're getting multiple offers and everything flies off the shelf. And believe it or not, only 82% of the listings that get listed in that market sell during the first listing period, which means 18% of the listings do not. That's almost 1 in 5 do not sell during the first listing period. So if you want to figure out whether or not a seller might be motivated, first start by looking for expireds and withdrawals, because in those cases, it could be that the market did not cooperate with the seller. And so they decided to make some changes, take the house off the market, and it could be an indication they're more motivated. Number 2, price adjustments. I was on with a team in Florida. They said nobody was motivated in their market. We looked in their listing service, and there were 712 price decreases. Let me say that one more time. There were 712 price decreases in the last 7 days. A lot of the listing services out there, especially the ones that use Matrix, they have those statistics right on the front page when you log into the listing service. And so if you had a way to identify only the listings that have price decreases to your buyers, even if they're slightly outside of your client's criteria or your geographic area, at least that might be an indication of a seller who is saying to the world, hey, I'm more motivated. I'm willing to reduce my price. I'm willing to take a little less money now than I thought I was going to get 15 days ago or 30 days ago or 60 days ago. And the last item, and I know I've gone right to left, is total days on the market. So I don't know what the average total days on the market are in your market area. In Metro Atlanta, they're probably in the high 30s. Most everybody would tell you they're 2 or 3. They're not. They're in the high 30s. And so the reality is any listing that's been on the market for more than 30 days or 45 days, in today's market, sellers start thinking, maybe I'm not going to be able to sell my house as easily as I thought, and it might get them into a position to be more motivated. Remember, you cannot determine the motivation of a seller. The seller determines the motivation of the seller. But the market and timing will make sellers more motivated. There are some sellers who are certainly testing the water. And if they can't sell their house in 6 months or 9 months or a year, then they'll just take it off the market. But most people who put a house on the market need to move forward, and they need to do it in a timely fashion. So number 10 is get out there and find properties where you might have a seller that's more motivated. Number 11, you got to teach strategies. Now, it sounds like I'm saying to team leaders, you need to teach strategies for winning in multiple offer situations. That's not what we're saying here at all. We're saying you need to teach the buyers the strategies for multiple offer situations. So let me give you a scenario. You have a buyer that comes to you to say that they say, I want to buy a house in this school district. I want to buy it from $250,000 to $300,000. I want to buy it from $550,000 to $600,000, whatever it is. This many bedrooms, this many baths. You're an expert in this area, and you know that there's going to be multiple people who want to buy those houses when they go on the market. Well, what happens is in a lot of cases, we have to let the buyers lose a couple of houses so that they get properly motivated to do the right things, clean up their offer, make reasonable offers, whatever it is. But you knew in advance when they told you what they were looking for that there were probably going to be multiple offers made on that house. And so what I'm telling you is this: you can use something like the Workman Success System's 12 tips, easy for me to say, for negotiating multiple offers. And you're educating a buyer, a consumer in advance as to what they need to do in order to make their offer stand out compared to the competition. So that's number 11. Teach buyers the strategies for winning in multiple offer situations. It doesn't mean they'll follow your advice. But if we don't give them the advice and they lose out, I would say it might be our fault they lost out. If we give them the advice and they choose not to follow it, probably not our fault. Now, I'm not saying that's funny or, hey, nanny, you should do what we tell you to. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying it's our job to educate the consumer. And if we do that and they don't make the right decisions, then I feel like we've done our job. Now, this is going to scare some of you, but you got to create a process for moving quickly and writing offers. I know that inspection periods and due diligence are so different all over the country. And in some cases, you can't write an offer for a buyer that the buyer might want to turn around and cancel if it doesn't work out. But in a lot of states, you can. And what I found agents do is once they get to know a buyer and their criteria, then they actually are able to just give the buyers a tour online and then able to go ahead and submit an offer for them because they've already pre-agreed. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to submit offers. Certainly the buyer has to sign it, but sometimes in today's market, you got to get something under contract before you can figure out whether or not you want to buy it. That's number 11. Create a specific process for moving quickly and writing offers. How many buyers have you worked with over the last several months that lost out and they shouldn't have lost out? Next is become the new construction expert. This is number 12, and we're going to go through these last few a little bit faster. They're easy to understand. You need to know every single new home builder, every single new construction neighborhood in your area, and you need to become friends with those agents because in a lot of cases, there's a lot of inventory that's 3 or 6 months out that's coming in new construction. And if you can have that information, you'll be one step ahead of your competition, and you will find homes for your buyers that other people may or may not find. Number 13, and I hope you're getting some good information out of this today. I really, really do. Is go back and look at expired and withdrawn listings in history. So people say, I already do expireds and withdrawns. Well, I'm not talking about the expireds or withdrawns that have happened in the last couple of weeks. I'm talking about ones that happened in 2017 or 2018 or 2019. Go back and listen to those. And if you hear the thunder in the background, I really apologize. It sounds like we've got a doozy of a thunderstorm happening here in Atlanta. But step 13 is go back and look at the expireds and the withdrawns from history and see if you can resurrect some of those people who might be interested in selling their home. Next item, and we've got 3 more here. This is number 13. This is send out We Have a Buyer letters. One of the easiest ways to market to get a listing is to say, we have a buyer who's looking in your neighborhood. People send these things out to subdivisions all the time, but in most cases, I don't think the agents are telling the truth. I think the agents are just fishing for a listing. But if you have a specific buyer who's looking at a specific neighborhood, mail something into that neighborhood that says, I have a buyer for a home that meets these criteria. Let me know if you're interested in selling. You might just find a house that you can connect with your buyer. And if you don't, then you might find a home that you can list. And we need to bring more listing inventory in as well. Number 14, you might need to be able to put your buyers in a position where they can make cash offers. I'm not going to recommend any vendors, but there are third-party companies that will take a buyer who has a financed offer and let them turn into a cash offer with, in some cases, no financing or appraisal contingencies. And so a lot of times we assume if we lose out to someone that has no financing or appraisal contingency, they were all cash, but they might not have been all cash. They might have been using a program that allowed the buyer to look like they were paying all cash even when they weren't. So do a little investigating in your area and see what you can find out about all cash offers. Number 15, and this is something that is included in the multiple offer worksheet, is sometimes you might want to include an escalation clause. Meaning we might pay $1,000 more than the next highest bona fide offer, or more than the highest bona fide offer. Sometimes that really makes your offers stand out to the seller. And number 17 is, don't be afraid of a backup contract. I say that your average listing that has multiple offers on it, when the seller goes under contract in Metro Atlanta, there's probably a 40% chance that listing is going to come back on the market, especially if there's a backup offer in place, because if you have a backup offer in place, then that influences how the seller might manage their relationship with the buyer in first position. So number 17, don't be afraid to submit backup offers. Hey, if you've liked any of the stuff that I've talked about today, I invite you to subscribe to my podcast. It's available on iTunes and Spotify and Google Podcasts and SoundCloud and Stitcher. All you got to do is go there and search Cleve Gaddis. That's CLEVE, short for Cleveland. Gaddis, Gaddis. I would love for you to be a subscriber, and I'd love to hear some thoughts and some comments on this session or anything else you ever hear from me. I love being part of the RE/MAX network. I've only been part of the RE/MAX network for the last 20 years. I am pumped about the future, and I hope you have a great finish for 2021. Thanks, everybody. Hello, RE/MAX family. This is Cleve Gaddis, who's with RE/MAX Center right here in Northeast Atlanta, Georgia, Johns Creek, Georgia, to be specific. By the way, if you have any referrals, send them my way.